I'll see you guys in the dark.
I live in the downtown area of a pretty major city. My street is relatively quiet, but I can't say so much for the surrounding neighborhoods. My city as a whole is infamous for drug activity and gun violence. We also have an increasing number of homeless people as our shelters have almost all closed down. I've generally never minded. Things happen, and I didn't grow up in the best circumstances either. I would never stereotype anyone based on their housing status, and I was even involved with a homeless outreach program at the time. I left and never went back after this. I've been hesitant to help anyone ever since. It's 10 or so at night, and I'm headed to my partner's house, about 30 minutes away from my own. I get about 2 blocks away before remembering I needed gas. I'm not too fond of the area of stopping at a gas station near my apartment at this time of night, but I wasn't going to make it all the way to the suburbs. I pull into one in a not-so-great part of the neighborhood, but it was brightly lit, and there were a lot of people walking by, so I didn't think much of it. I get my gas and go in to grab a couple of snacks. When I came back out, a tall man in a black coat and brown beanie started casually chatting to me. I couldn't tell if he was 25 or 40. His voice is so low that I can barely make out what he's saying. Something about being a music producer and working on a new project. He seems friendly enough, well, maybe a little erratic, so I let him ramble for a few minutes before politely telling him I needed to get going. He tells me his name is Mac. I unlock my door to get in, and this dude gets in the passenger seat with me. At this point, he is no longer a friendly, chatty stranger. I'm fucking terrified. His demeanor hasn't changed enough, though, and he's acting like this is the most normal thing in the world. While I've had more than my fair share of encounters with creeps, nothing like this has ever happened to me. I don't scream. I don't tell him to screw off. I just sit there in fear of what he'd do to me if I resisted. I need money for my son, he says. He's in the hospital with a gunshot wound. His mom's waiting for me there. I know this story is bullshit, but I just want him to get out of my car. I give him what little I have in my wallet and tell him I need to get going. He has the nerve to ask me, "Can you drive me to my friend's house? It's right up the road." What? Isn't he supposed to be going to the hospital for his son? I tried to decline as politely as possible. I tell him my boyfriend is waiting for me, and this opened up the floodgates to a bunch of personal questions about my sex life. What my boyfriend and I are going to do when I get there, and extremely gross, unsolicited comments about my body. I have tried to block out this exact words to me, but it was incredibly gross, and I'm sure that this is it. This is the end. I'm trapped in my own car. The gas station parking lot is empty. I can't tell the police. Even if I could, it would be a really bad idea. I wish I could tell you I had some genius idea that helped me get myself out of this, but I didn't. I'm panicked and frozen, and finally I agree to take him where he supposedly wanted to go. He has me drive around this neighborhood, winding through dark streets with a lot of seemingly abandoned houses, for what seems like forever. He finally had me stop in a parking lot of a beauty salon where his friend supposedly worked, and is going to get a ride with her to the hospital. The parking lot is on a busy street, and brightly lit. If he's going to kill me, he picked a terrible place to do it. He was all over the place, and talked rapidly. Little details of this story keep changing constantly, and he is clearly high as a kite, and probably mentally unstable as well. All the while, he continues to act like we were longtime friends, and nothing about this was terrifying. He keeps telling me he would give anything to trade places with my boyfriend. Ugh, gross. I keep gently reminding him I need to be leaving, and he keeps telling me to stay because his friend will give me money to pay me back for helping his son out. I wonder why she couldn't have just given him the money directly if that was the case. I ask him what's taking his friend so long. He says he doesn't know. Can he use my phone to call her? I want to tell him no. Maybe this is all an elaborate ploy to steal my phone and take off. I'm still thinking he could be a murderer, though, so I reluctantly hand over the phone. He's taking a long time to dial while I'm looking away, and then, oh Jesus Christ, all of a sudden he's looking up porn and jacking off right in front of me. I wish I had a way to prove this, because I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's true, and the image is burned into my mind. Should have seen that one coming, I guess. At this point, I lose my cool and tell him to get the fuck out. I'm done with it. He starts crying, wailing, about how I'm just so hot, and he hated thinking about me with another man, and I just turned him on so much. I'm just staring at him like, okay, too bad for you, but you need to go now. He straightens up with a big smile on his face and says, I'm just fucking with you. I'm not a pussy, so I wouldn't just cry like that. Are you sure you don't want to take me to a completely different location? Yes, I'm freaking sure. I told him my boyfriend was probably worried about me, as an hour ago had gone by this point. Somehow that got his attention, and he got out and left. I drove to my partner's house, shaking. He and I had just started dating at this point, and I didn't want him to think I was stupid or something. So I just nonchalantly told him I was dealing with a creep at the gas station, and it took me a little while. Much later, I told him the real story, and he was appropriately horrified. I wish I could say it stopped there, but I started getting calls from all kinds of local numbers for the next couple of weeks. Only one voicemail was left, and it was a lot of breathing and very faint words I couldn't make out. I'm creeped out, but I try to dismiss it as paranoia. One time I actually answered. Hey, it's Mac. I have your money. I feel like I need to throw up now. I don't need it, I say. Please leave me alone. I hang up as he starts rambling about how beautiful I am and how he wants to see me again. I block every strange number that's been calling me, and the calls stop. I can't imagine how he got my number. My only thought is that when he opened my phone to call his friend, he looked at my contacts, where my own number is displayed at the top. Now, you may wonder why I never called the police. My city is extremely well known for its police using excessive force, especially in the downtown area. People are regularly killed by police here, and I've personally witnessed people be beaten up by cops for quite minor fractions. I do not intend to make any kind of political statement or express my opinions here, but it genuinely felt I could have been putting myself in further danger by calling the police when even after all this was over. Best case scenario, nothing would have been done, and I could have been chewed out by the cops for being stupid enough to let this man into my car. Worst case, they shoot him, and I have to live with that forever. I've regretted that since, though, because a friend of mine later had an encounter with him as well on a completely opposite side of the city, and gave her the same story about his son in the hospital. She ended up driving him around aimlessly for an hour before screaming at him to get the hell out. So, Mac, you're welcome, but let's never fucking meet ever again. Halloween has, unfortunately, never been a big deal out here in Scotland, and that's always bummed me out because I do love Halloween. But after this year, I think I'll be happy never celebrating it again. My street and the next street over have a lot of young kids who go out trick-or-treating. So while I was out shopping all day with my mom, we decided to pick up some sweets in case someone came over to our door. I had plans to go to the cinema to see Ouija with my boyfriend. So when I got home, I was getting myself ready to go out, and my mom was busy putting the shopping away. So when the first load of kids came to the door, I was the one who answered it. There were children from our street, the next one over, and some I couldn't recognize as well as an adult at the end of the path. And they were dressed all in black, and had some sort of mask covering their face, but it wasn't anything I recognized from a movie or anything. Anyway, they all told me their jokes, and I gave them their treats, and they made their way back down the path onto the next house. I was about to close the door when I noticed that the guy with the kids was still standing at the end of my path. He hadn't noticed, and he wasn't watching the child either. He was looking right at me, and my skin started to crawl when I realized that he was just staring at me. I backed slowly into the house and watched him as he raised his hand and waved slowly at me. And I was about to call out to him when my mom came to the door and made sure that I was all right. He took off in the opposite way from the children. He hadn't been with them at all, and he left as soon as he realized that I wasn't home alone. I was completely freaked out and told my boyfriend all about it when he came to the house to pick me up, but I quickly forgot all about it when we were watching the movie. When I finally got home, it was getting really late, and trick-or-treating was well and truly over around here. When I got inside, my mom was just getting ready to take the dogs out for a walk, so that they would do their last-minute business, and they would meet my dad on the way back home from work. So I was going to be home alone. After my horrible encounter posted on here, I don't really like being home alone, but it's worse on Halloween, and it always has been. Anyway, I was home alone, and I grabbed some snacks and went up to my bedroom and onto my computer so that I could do some of my writing, scroll through Tumblr, and listen to my music. After my first creepy encounter with the guys coming into my house and into my backyard, my dad bought a motion-censored light and attached it to the wall of our house right outside my window. Normally it will go off whenever a cat walks along our fence, but it will usually go off after a couple of minutes. I always know when the light has come on because it lights up my whole room, given where it's placed. And while I was sitting at my computer, the light came on. I ignored it at first because I knew that it would go off soon, but 5 minutes passed, and it still hadn't gone off. So I opened up my blinds to look outside and see what was going on. My stomach almost fell out of my ass when I looked out and saw the creep from hours before sitting on the fence, waving at my window to keep the light on. His waving slowed down suddenly when he spotted me, and it was all seriously creepy again, and I didn't know what to do. I just got flashbacks from before. Luckily, I heard the front door open and my parents coming into the house with the dogs, so I rushed down the stairs and started screaming at them about the guy on the fence. My dad didn't question me. He took the dogs and rushed through the house, threw the back door open, and ran outside, and then I heard him shouting, "Get the fuck out of here, you creep! I'm going to phone the police!" Dad scared him off, but I convinced him not to call the police because I didn't want to relive the whole thing over again. I just wanted to go to sleep and forget all about that whole night. So, to the creepy guy in the mask waving at me from the end of the path and sitting on my fence, let's not meet again. A little backstory of when this happened. I was 22 years old and had just graduated from college with a bachelor's degree in computer programming and was feeling like a hotshot. I moved into a nice little studio apartment, which was actually a motel room at one point, before the apartment company took over and did renovations. The area was nice, with lots of trees, beautiful views, and a small river that ran behind the apartments. Being situated 10 miles outside of the city meant that there were not that many people who frequented our area. But I was glad of that, as it would be nice to have some peace and quiet to focus on my programming and web design skills. I remember hearing everyone in high school and college rambling about being in the deep web, or dark web as you may say. The uses are actually quite interchangeable. However, they also are two very different parts of the internet as a whole. You have the clear net that can be accessed by anyone with an internet connection and search engine such as Google. Then you have the deep web, which is the greater part of the internet that is hidden and cannot be accessed without a special program or browser such as Tor. And finally, part of, and inside of the deep web, you have the dark web, or even dark net, where most of the horrific stories you hear about take place. Hearing all of these stories from either friends or from reading of them online over the years intrigued me and set me on the career path that, at the time, I thought I truly wanted. Now, not so much. My goal was simple, to create a program that would run without the use of a script, that would actually be disguised as a picture profile. If someone opened the file, then my program would execute and be able to look directly into the computer system full log records, and would be able to sniff out the original IP address of the affected computer, as well as any personal information such as names, birthdays, credit card numbers, etc., Now I know what you are thinking. I was definitely up to no good in creating a program like this. But you would be completely wrong. After hearing some of the truly horrifying people that hide in the dark web, and seeing as many of the stories end with these same never getting caught, I could not fathom why anyone made a program to catch these people. I worked out how I could catch these people, think like, and to pretend to be one of those people. When I had finally compiled the program, compressed it down to less than 1 megabyte, and disguised it like a picture profile I planned to use, I was already ready to test it out. I pulled out my old junky laptop that I used for school. The thing was a pure piece of shit, and the perfect test bed for anything that I created. I connected the laptop to the internet and created a test email and sent the file. I had to test different methods of delivery, so I also used a private Dropbox so I could test email delivery and opening, direct placement from a flash drive, and the big one that I was counting on, downloading the file and opening it from the internet outside of email programs. When all 3 methods worked, and started to send the data to my main desktop in the form of updating notepads, I jumped for joy. I thought to myself, so, basic IP and personal information sniffing works. What about if they are pros, using multiple VPNs and the likes? I installed 2 separate VPN programs on my test laptop, and even connected to a proxy server through them to test the results. They still came back to the same, just showing the additional IP addresses from the VPN. I was now ready to hunt these people down. My studying school paid off, having allowed me the knowledge to be able to create this amazing tool. I would make my own show like Chris Hansen's, To Catch a Predator, but mine would be called To Catch a Weber. Yes, my ego was extremely high at the time, but I could not celebrate. Not until I knew that it 100% worked without a doubt against a third party. This is when things really began to get interesting. I had Tor, and the hidden wiki opened up, my VPN fully configured, and I was ready to go. I wanted to get to the dark web, and most people find it by clicking something randomly. I selected a random site from the hidden wiki to begin my journey. Just a basic news board, basically spreading support to those who are oppressed around the world. I clicked on another link, and it took me to a blank page. I waited a few seconds, and still nothing, so I went back and tried another link. This one took me to some jewelry site. After reading some, I noticed at the end of each ad boasted about the jewelry being stolen from graves, fresh and old, some being claimed to be thousands of years old. Like most sites on the deep web, Bitcoin was the currency in use of the website. I saw enough there and was about to go back and try another link when a chat popped up with a generic name, admin, followed by a message. Hello, welcome to our site. Everything here is 100% authentic, antique, and unique. Is there anything specific you are looking for today? I must admit, I wasn't caught off guard at all. With normal online stores, this is pretty standard protocol. I typed out my reply confidently. You know, I was actually just looking for your selection. So much to choose from. It's a little overwhelming, and I am just mainly browsing. Which literally took 5 seconds. I had a reply from the admin. We'd look forward to seeing your purchase. Please let us know if we can assist you any further. Okay, now that seriously took me back. They told me they look forward to seeing my purchase. Fuck, that I clicked out without even replying. I had double-checked my setup, and I was still 100% anonymous. My VPN was still working, so that eased my paranoia. I clicked another link, and this time I was taken to a black web page with white text in the center. I could not read the text. In fact, when I looked closer, it didn't even look like any real writing at all. I clicked it, and a box popped up asking for what I'm assuming was login information. Obviously, I didn't have that, but oddly enough, yet another chat box popped up, and I just see, I got you. Info started being entered into the first box. The next screen I see is white, with what appeared to be a directory of many different areas. The chat box appeared again, and read, Enjoy and behave. I have no clue who that was, or where to even start in the directory. I know there are so many horrible people hiding on the dark web, but I wanted to stop the killers more than anything else. I heard so many stories of red rooms and people being kidnapped and used for other pleasures and dying horrific deaths, and I had to help stop that. I was on a mission. I clicked a random link, and the page slowly loaded. There were 3 different pictures displayed: a storm, a green pasture and sunlight, and a knife. Obviously, I clicked on the knife and was loaded into the dark web equivalent of a sick and sadistic Instagram of death. I saw one picture of an older guy laying on a couch with a gag in his mouth titled, "Vomit Death." A small description said the poster thought it would be funny to watch their friend drowned in their own drunken vomit. They went on to brag about how the gag relieved them from any legal responsibility in the death because it was deemed a stupid drunken game. I wanted to nail that dude, but continued on. Another image was of a young girl, probably early 20s, hanging from a tree with the title, "At Death I Part." The small description read, "You wanted till death do us part, now you have it, and I'm free." This one confused me then, and still does now for a couple reasons. Was this a suicide or a murder, and who posted it? The next picture I saw really caught my eye. It looked like one of those pieces of jewelry I had looked at on the jewelry site. A bracelet. In fact, the very one. The exact one that prompted the chat log to pop up. At this point, I knew better than to click on it, but I was also arrogant in my ego and had full confidence in my program. I clicked the picture. This time there was a small handwritten note in the picture. "Hello, we need your business. You did not make a purchase." After reading that, and feeling my heart practically stop, I was then automatically redirected back to the jewelry site and looking at the same damn bracelet. Immediately, the chat box popped up with the admin and read, "We knew you would be back to make your purchase." I did not even know what to say before they added, "The site you were just on is also run by us. We helped you log in so you could get a small taste of our different varieties of content. Access is subscription-based, and you pay for access by buying our jewelry. Furthermore, if you do not make a purchase, then we will restrict further in future access to our sites, as well as release your browsing habits to your family and friends. You have 10 minutes to decide." I simply reply, "Searching is not a crime. I did not find much value in your other websites. I have seen better, and I don't wear jewelry, so, sorry, no sale." I felt like a smug bastard knowing they couldn't know who I am personally, or even track me, but the reply got me shocked. "Whatever sites contain the content you viewed is all under us. You don't know what you are getting into or how big our business is. Simply make a small purchase, and we can move on." I get aggressive sales tactics, but this takes the cake in being intertwined with blackmail and extortion. I wouldn't have it, and replied, "I refuse to be blackmailed or extorted by people or entities claiming to have false information on me. Unlike you people, I have proof of a better site that does not strong-arm their users. You cannot provide any information to me, about me, like I'm sure you can others, and you know this." The admin typed back, "You have no proof. You are probably some kid acting out. Tell you what, show me your proof, and I will show you mine." Arrogant, and with the time I had waiting for having arrived, I uploaded the image to a secure site and messaged them when it was done. I did not get a reply right away, but after about 3 minutes, I knew they opened the image, thus executing the hidden program, because I started getting a plethora of log updates. This happened for about 5 minutes before the logs stopped updating, and another 5 minutes before the admin finally came back and said, "I thought you had proof of a better site than ours, James. Truly I am disappointed, but not surprised. No site tops what we provide as a whole, and you do not even understand how deep things go. As for the picture of your cat, very sneaky, but you did not consider your one serious flaw. That anyone with knowledge of how your little toy works can reverse engineer it, dismantle it, and can find where the information is being sent to. You are in a very nice, secluded area, and easily traceable. Unlike me, who is operating under many different aliases, stolen identities, and on throwaway laptops. I could be mobile in a matter of seconds, gone without a trace. Let me share a couple of things with you to help you make the wise choice in your situation. our image site of the deceased that you saw and clicked through. Well, some of those people are people who became an issue, and their jewelry, one of the millions of pieces we have available currently on top of what we have collected over the years. Now, are you going to make your purchase? My jaw hit the floor. I was freaking speechless, and this lunatic was absolutely right. I did not account for being backtraced through my own program because of my arrogance. Not to mention the fact that if you were really using multiple identities, tracking down the perp just isn't going to happen. I couldn't reply. I was frozen in fear when another bit of text popped up in the chat box. James, I know you are still there. Just make a purchase, James, and we both disappear afterwards and have no further contact. I don't want to send my associates to you. You haven't truly insulted us yet. Just make a purchase, and this can all be done. Don't spit in the face of our work. I slammed my laptop to the ground and started stomping it out, like the scene in Office Space where they beat the crap out of the printer. Pieces were flying all over the place, and it was just an unrecognizable pile of metal and bits. I was on a month-to-month lease at the time and moved out the next day to another place in the city. It was more expensive, and the location sucked, but knowing I had lots of others around me constantly made me feel safe, and it still does. That was 3 years ago, and I'm still living in the place I moved to after this happened. I have since stuck to web design and have stayed far away from the deep and dark web. Nothing has come of this that I know of, but they could still be out there, watching and waiting, and then I may become part of their content for all I know. For the sake of your safety, and everyone else's around you, do not go to the deep web. That was my mistake. Don't make it yours. I need to buy myself off the deep web before somebody else does. I don't know how much time I have. I saw the offer hours ago. The only thing I can do now is tell you how it happened upon myself. It's stupid, really. Really, really freaking stupid. I was trying to impress my friends. We were all enrolled in IT classes in our school. We would take turns seeing who would bring up the most messed up stuff we could find. It started out with showing our friends websites on the deep web. People would buy drugs from. Drugs that were never even heard of. They got boring real quick. Other friends began upping their content and try and stand out in the game of, I'm more tech savvy than you. They would bring more pictures, each more disgusting and gruesome than the last. Pictures of people dying, people being tortured in unimaginable ways, people that were already gone. One person brought upon a child site, a child snuff site. Instead of people saying exactly how messed up this was, and how this should all have stopped, and how this should have never began in the first place, and how stupid this was, and how much danger we were in at this point. They congratulated her, gave her pats on the back, asked her how she could even sit down properly in her computer chair because of how big her balls were. I felt like vomiting. I felt like beating the ever-living shit out of everybody that couldn't believe how fucked up it was to see finding child snuff on the internet as accomplishments. I didn't say anything, though. They began to notice that I never showed off anything myself. Pussy slowly became more my new nickname at school. School became a living hell for me. My friends began shoving those terrible pictures in my face whenever they could. When I cried and vomited, they claimed that they were trying to desensitize me. Everything became too much, though. I promised myself I wouldn't venture too deep, that I would only stay long enough to find something that could appease them. At this point, we were long past the point of finding cool drugs or whatever else we could. I knew I had to find something that could hold importance. At this point, I had been on the deep web for 3 hours. 5 hours was what it took to put an offer for me on the deep web. At one point, I remember opening up a seemingly blank web page. Immediately, the light next to my computer camera flashed briefly. 5 or so seconds. I minimized my browser to close photo booth, only to find that it wasn't even open. I didn't think anything of it. I was tired and had school the next day, so I closed everything and went to sleep. The next few days went the same as the last, until yesterday at least. When I walked in, everyone was huddled around one desk, talking in hushed voices. A few of the girls were crying, and all of them were pale and covered in sweat. I didn't want to see whatever had caused this reaction. Nobody noticed I had walked in until after class had started. I caught several of them staring at me during the class. They had probably planned a new way to make me go home sobbing. I tried to leave class as quickly as I could, but one of them caught me by the shoulder and spun me around. "We need to talk, dude." This voice was quivering, and his clammy, trembling hands were soaking through my t-shirt. He led me to the back of the classroom where other students in the same shape as him, or worse, were huddled. He began passing out pictures. When it was my turn, I told him that I didn't want to see whatever they had. "No, you have to see this." Something about the way that he said it told me that this was serious, and it wasn't just regularly bullying. I cracked open one eye. I saw a girl on the paper, along with some sort of description and a price. I opened my eyes further and saw that it was an ad of some sort. I thought, oh, this isn't that bad. It hadn't fully hit me yet until I read what was on that description. "Hi, it's me again, back with some more for you guys. This one's look very young, with a bit of extra weight on her. I don't know, need to get more pictures?" I think it was her first time here. She wasn't protected at all. It was so easy. Enough about that, though. For now, her starting price is $118,000. We'll go up or down when we get more pictures and do the physical inspection. Anyways, we'll keep you updated. There was a picture of me, staring at my computer intently. I had no social media. The only picture of me were the ones I had taken with a group. There were so many emotions swirling through me. One that stood above all was confusion. The crippling fear was lurking in the shadows for now. How had this person gotten this picture of me? My mind went back to when the light next to my camera turned on. One question answered. Next, the paralyzing fear set in. I felt my heart stop completely, then beat violently in my throat and my ears. My stomach then dropped. My eyes searched furiously over the page for any information about me. I felt relief at the fact that my full name, along with my address, wasn't there. That all came crashing down when I realized that the person who had posted the ad had these, but chose not to put them in the description in case anybody wanted to grab me without paying. I knew without a doubt that the others were going to be sold too. I passed out. I woke up in the nurse's office, who told me I had a fever. My mom picked me up and took me home. I went straight to my room and locked the door. I haven't touched my personal computer since. I put tape over my phone camera, even though I know my efforts are futile. Everything I hear now is someone is out to get me. The only sick thing that comforts me now is that the pretty bitches that made me do this in the first place are going to sell quicker than me. I was seeing this guy during my senior year of high school. Let's call him Nathan for this story. Nathan was just a few months younger than me, but acted like he was about 5 years old most of the time. We started dating on my great-grandmother's 86th birthday, and kept it a secret from my family for about 2 weeks before my mom caught us texting. Most of our time was spent together during the classes that we shared, and at my grandmother's house when I was living there. He was always polite towards my family, so I earned him an invitation to family dinner on my birthday. My phone wasn't turned on, so as a birthday present, my grandmother and her current husband gave me 2 choices for a gift. The choices they gave me were a phone that actually had service, or a tattoo that I had been waiting for the past 2 years. I chose the phone so that I wouldn't have to use Wi-Fi to talk to anyone. That same day, my grandmother got herself a brand new iPhone, and handed me her old one that was already set up on her family plan. Unfortunately, the plan didn't come with unlimited data, so I had to stay connected to Wi-Fi as much as possible to avoid using up all the data, and causing the phone bill to skyrocket. Well, soon after getting the phone, Nathan was accusing me of cheating on him while I was at work, and would steal my phone to go through it all the time. I thought that he was just being self-conscious and paranoid, so I let it slide. Nathan turned out to be much worse than I thought. When I stopped letting him go through my phone, he started telling everyone that I was cheating on him. It took me 2 months to get the story straightened out with almost the entire school. Soon after, I started noticing that I wasn't alone whenever I went to school or work. Nathan's friends would trail behind me at school and randomly show up at my job and start taking pictures of me. When I confronted one of them, they told me that they were sending pictures of my coworkers to Nathan so that he could pick a better girlfriend. I knew that they were lying, and as soon as I got off work, I called Nathan to confront him about having his friends follow me around. He denied having me followed and told me that I was crazy for accusing him of having me followed. I knew that at that moment, Nathan was a pathological liar. He would have his friends follow me and lie about it whenever I confronted him. While I was out working and building a life for myself and potentially for him, Nathan was out talking to other girls and even sleeping with most of them. After almost 6 months together, I was sick of him lying to me and trying to cover it up. I broke up with him 2 weeks before Valentine's Day and the day before my friend's sweet 16. He seemed like he was done with me. I wish he would have been done with me. Instead of leaving well enough alone, Nathan decides to harass me some more before graduation came around in May. I was still followed by his friends, sent threatening messages over every platform they could possibly think of, and even received threatening phone calls. The week before Valentine's Day, I moved out of my grandmother's house and moved in with someone that I lived in with the neighborhood that I had known for about 4 years. Nathan still made it a point to harass me along with the people that I live with. I thought that it would never stop until I got a phone call from one of the girls that Nathan cheated on me with. She was asking me where he was and assumed that I was still dating him when she dropped the biggest bombshell on me. This underage girl was pregnant, and it was Nathan's baby. I told her that I didn't know where he was and that I wasn't dating him anymore. She kept asking me for help finding him, and instead of just going around in circles with this girl, I gave her his address so that she can go to his house, tell him and his whole family the news. Of course, the harassment didn't end there. Nathan threatened me with violence for giving his underage baby mama his address so she could announce her pregnancy to the whole family. I had absolutely no regrets about doing it because I knew that he wouldn't man up and be a father, and she needed to see that. Instead of arguing with him on the phone, I hung up and blocked his number for good. This girl tried so hard to get him to accept that he was going to be a father, but he wasn't having it. Instead of acting like a man, he decided that chasing and harassing me was more fun. The cycle of harassment continued for several months until he dropped off the face of the earth. The last I heard about this girl, she went into premature labor at about 24 weeks and ended up having the baby. Her baby spent 4 months in a neonatal intensive care unit somewhere, and he never once went to see that baby. As far as I know, she was able to bring her healthy little bundle of joy home, but tragedy struck in her little family a few weeks later. I feel bad for her losing that child, but I feel bad knowing that she let someone like Nathan father her child. If I could say one thing to him, it would be, "Drop dead, asshole."
I worked at Six Flags last summer. Well, technically, a free arts company. I worked at Six Flags last year. Well, technically, a freelance arts company, leasing vending spots there. I was one of the oldest people hired. Attending college while most of the co-workers were in high school. I took photos in a sort of old-timey dress-up shop. It was honestly one of the most fun jobs I've had. I was hired back in March of 2018 and started work in April, when the park was open on weekends only before the official opening. I had been working for about a month, and the park was now open during the week for less than 10 hours per day, so I was only able to work all day, but was unfortunately the only one in the shop as college was on summer break. You see where this story is going. I was alone all day during the week and had some co-workers on the weekend. I was so terribly alone during the day that I'd walk across the path to see my other coworkers out of boredom. When I was outside of my shop during the day, I began to notice a man hanging around my area. I'd mentally see him walk by very slowly, staring at me the whole time. I figured he was just shy, wanting a picture inside, and was too afraid or socially awkward to ask for pricing. Deep down, he gave me an uneasy feeling, and I decided to ignore it because he was a customer in the park and was probably just very antisocial. I kept a smile and tried pulling in customers all day, every day. One day I smiled and waved at him. That was probably my big mistake. He walked over briskly to stand in front of me and stare at me. I was creeped out. I was scared. He then asked about prices after days of walking by me and staring. I breathed a sigh of relief and started going through my mesmerizing sales pitch. After I finished, he started to smile. Not a normal smile, one that made my skin crawl. He leaned in so close I could smell his breath. He asked me how it would be for him. He asked me how much it would be for him. I was confused, as I'd just gone through my price lists. So I stated that the prices were set and non-negotiable unless you were an art company employee or a park employee. He shrugged and walked off. When I ran through my sales pitch, a family had grown interested and wanted some pictures. So I gladly took them into the shop and had a wonderful time photographing them. While I was checking the family out and collecting payments, I looked up, and the man was back, leaning against the chain barrier in front of my shop. The family collected their things and walked to the chain. The man had to move to the side for me to open it for them. I immediately closed it behind them as they tried pushing his way into the shop. I told him I was sorry, but only paying customers could come in. He wasn't allowed unless he was considered a purchase. He frowned and walked away. I waited a few minutes, tidied up the shop, and stepped back outside. It was almost closing time, so it was pointless. I had to stand outside, or else I'd get in trouble with my boss. I noticed him one last time that day. Across the way from me was a game, and I saw him hiding behind it, peeking his head out and looking at me. I can't tell you how scared I was. I wanted to cry. He continued to do this for the entire week, and I eventually began to ignore him, which he did not like. On that Friday, as soon as the park opened, he made a beeline towards me. I was out front organizing outdoor props, and I froze. I hastily dropped what I was doing and went inside, closing the chain behind me. He paced back in front of the chain, muttering to himself and looking at me. I was so terrified. I was going to run to the phone and call security if he didn't leave. He suddenly lurched towards, grabbing the chain in both of his hands. I will never forget this moment because my heart stopped and my blood ran cold. His eyes were wild, and that same menacing grin was back. He started whispering about things he wanted me to do to him. It was disgusting. He was talking about how he loved me and all the sexual things he wanted me to do to him. He wanted me to put him in a dress and said he wanted me to humiliate him in front of all the people in the park. I was slowly backing up to the wall in my shop as he started yelling and laughing. I told him to go away, that I would call security if he didn't leave right away. He got even more angry and said something that keeps me up at night, even a year later. I'll be waiting for you outside of the employee exit. Meet me there or else. He gave that disgusting smile and walked away. I went behind the counter and started sobbing. I never imagined I'd have something like this happen to me, and now that it had, all of my knowledge of what to do went out the window. I was crying like a little girl. I decided to tell my manager at the end of the day because I didn't want to be afraid of coming to work. When I told him, he was mortified that I hadn't told him sooner. He walked me to the secret exit to the employee parking lot so I wouldn't see the man again. The next morning, we went to the security office, and I gave a description to all the parking security of what he looked like and what he normally would wear. I went back to my shop with 2 coworkers, and not even 5 minutes later, Here he comes, strolling over with an angry look on his face. I hadn't met him, and he was furious at that. My coworkers noticed my panic as I ran and hid in the back. I hadn't told them of my situation yet, and when I did, they told me they wouldn't leave me alone even after shift was over, seeing as how I was the closer, and they didn't want me to be left alone at all. I called security and told them what he was wearing, so they updated information. They posted a security officer outside my shop. He seemed to disappear because of that. When the officer left to take care of something, he came back. Security realized that every time a clothed officer was around, he would hide. So they posted a plain clothing officer across from my shop, posing as a customer. I was being used as bait ultimately, but I felt it was important to get him out of the park. Security eventually apprehended him later that day as he was headed towards my shop. They asked me for identification on him, and I remember breaking down and sobbing. The officer comforted me. Finally, this nightmare was over. He never physically threatened me or wielded a weapon, but he was doing enough verbal threats to make me fear for my life. They banned him from all Six Flags parks around the country, revoked his membership status, and took him into custody. Unfortunately, as there was no violent act committed, they had to let him go. As I drove home that night, I saw him walking on the side of the road, and I immediately sped away in fear he would see me through the window and chase me. At least he couldn't get me at work anymore. I found out a couple of weeks later from one of my security friends that he saw my stalker being arrested in the town over. I went and looked up arrest records for the town later in the day, and saw he had been arrested for indecent exposure, public endangerment, and public intoxication. I know what happened to me is not as severe as other stories, but it was one of the most terrifying weeks in my life. You really don't think something like this will happen to you until it does. Please, everyone, always notice who's around you at all times and be cautious of everybody. Fuck this horse shit. Fuck this horse shit.
This happened to me a few years back when I was in my early 20s. At the time, I worked in a department store at a makeup counter. The job relies on heavy, good customer service and building relationships because you want people to keep coming back to spend money on your products. We're given personalized business cards so that we can build our own client base. It's not uncommon to be familiar with people who frequently shop in the store. As workers, our training is focused on being friendly and accommodating. One day while I was working, I had to move to a makeup counter that wasn't my own to cover someone else's lunch break. It was a really slow day, so I was just leaning on the counter, people watching. I could tell most shoppers were just browsing, so I kept to myself. One of the people that I noticed was a very tall and broad man. He walked very slowly, almost hunched over. His face was fixed very aggressively, like he was angry but focused. He circled around the counter a few times, but I could feel his gaze on me instead of the products. After a few rotations around the department, I decided to greet him in case he needed some help. It wasn't until he came directly over to me that I realized just how big he actually was. I'm 4'10", 140-pound female, so I feel pretty small regardless, but even this slouched posture, he was over 6 feet tall, and well over twice my weight. I'll never forget his teeth. They were completely black in the front. Your eyes couldn't help but go right to them. Despite his menacing appearance, he was soft-spoken. Truthfully, I could tell he wasn't all there by the way he talked. He told me no when I asked if he needed help, but requested my number. So direct. We had never spoken before. I declined and said that I was in a relationship and that it would be inappropriate. He then asked if he could have the business card for the counter in case he wanted to get products. Since I wasn't on my normal counter, and I really wanted him to go away, I handed him my coworker's business card and told him to call if he had any questions. It worked, and he walked away after that, filling me with relief. Only a couple minutes later, the phone on the counter rings. I answer with my peppy customer service voice and say, "Thank you for calling. How can I help you?" And immediately, I know it was the guy when he starts talking. He asked me again for my personal number, and I explain once again that I cannot do that, but he just wants to talk. Since he wasn't getting the hint, I say, I should have told you that I'm married. You can't have my number. Politely he apologized and hangs up. I thought that would be the end of him, but for the next few weeks or so, I spent much of my time at work anxious about if he would show up. I would see him every week, and he would lurk around the counter looking for me. Anytime I would see him, I'd immediately drop what I was doing and run or hide to the closest customer and offer my bit of assistance to make it look like I was busy, so he wouldn't talk to me at all. I successfully dodged him every time, and it came to the point where I stopped seeing him. I was thrilled about this. I had completely forgotten about him until one day I decided to go to Walmart by myself to pick up a few things on my day off. I generally like to shop alone. I can take all the time I need, and I like leisuring around. I grabbed a customer basket and made my way over to the cosmetic and hair wellness section, since that's where most of the things I needed were. I only managed to grab a few things before I locked eyes with him as I walked by the supplement aisle. I had recently changed my hair color and wasn't wearing my work uniform, so I didn't think he'd realize who I was. I was ready to just go about my shopping and ignore him until I noticed that he dropped the items he had in his hand and started heading my way. I panicked and swiftened my pace immediately. I thought to myself, he's just going to really follow you through the store. But as I turned around to look, I could see his humongous body just plowing through people, with that same terrifying look on his face, but only meaner. His black teeth growing closer with a snarl. Since the direction I was heading, I was walking the opposite to the exit, and there's no way in hell I was going to turn around. I decided that my best course of action would be to follow the perimeter to the store and cut down the center section, which would bring me closer to the registers. I sped walked the entire time, in hopes of losing him amongst all the people, but never once turning around again. By the time I made it to the register area, I could actually feel him behind me. Still not wanting to turn around to look, I glanced in the reflection of the soda machines that are in between the register aisles to see how close he was. To my horror, there was only about 1.5 to 2 feet between us. I was afraid to just drop my stuff and run out the door in case he followed me to my car. I parked in the far back of the parking lot and didn't want to risk it. I also didn't want to get in line at the register since the lines were long and I could just be standing there in the open alone. Instead, I walked into the cluster of people crowded around the self-checkout line. I noticed another large but older gentleman with his carriage in the middle and ran straight for him. The people were so closely clustered together, the man followed me, couldn't make it through. I ran over to the man in line and grabbed onto his carriage. I said, "I'm sorry, I'm not cutting you, but there's a man that's been following me through half the store, and I need to stand with you." He was so sweet, and let me be with him while we waited in line, and even let me go ahead of him so I could leave quicker. As I was cashing out, I could see in my peripheral vision my stalker staring at me and pacing about, but he wouldn't come near me since the self-checkout is somewhat sectioned off. By the time I had finished and grabbed my receipt, I couldn't see him anymore. I looked around, but he was nowhere. I thought about asking the older man to walk me to my car, but he still wasn't finished at his register, so I decided to call my boyfriend and make a run for it. Staying on the phone, I explained to him what was going on as I sprinted to my car in tears, frantically looking around in case he followed me outside. I made it to my car safely and rushed right home, breaking down to my parents about what had just happened. I could feel it in my bones that that man wanted to do something to me, and thankfully I didn't find out what that was. His aggressive aura was palpable. To this day, I can still remember the adrenaline and nervousness, the sheer terror I felt when he followed me. I had never felt so vulnerable and helpless, even with all those people around me. I quit that job roughly 2 years later. I had only seen him one other time there since the incident, but I still live in constant fear that we will cross paths again. I'm afraid to shop alone, something that I wouldn't have given a second thought a year before. So to my stalker with the black teeth, let's not meet ever again. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.